that's recording. And then, what's this? Hey! There we go. So this is Danny Ace UBW documentary footage. So that, later on when I can't find it. There we go. Can you tell me who you are and what you used to do in UBW, please?
It's just the subtlety of your seriousness when you... Yeah. Okay. My name's Dan Agar. I'm about 5'10", weigh about 190, 192. I was born in Edgware in London, and somehow I became Danny Ace in UBW.
I like it. How did you become aware of UBW then?
One day I was looking at the Ring of Honor reviews. I just got into Ring of Honor. It was about 2007, 2008, and I sort of just went on YouTube and I typed in Ring of Honor reviews and came across Mark Pearson's review page, and he was pretty big on Ring of Honor at the time, and he was doing lots of reviews. So I started following his page and watching out for new vids, things like that, as you do. And he started talking about this backyard fed that he was doing, which was BBW at the time. And I thought I'd check it out. They had their own channel, they had their own page, so I was, I thought I'd give it a try and see what it was. And it was a bunch of, random people who weren't very big and weren't very, didn't look like they were, trained and stuff. But I found it very entertaining, and it really was, it interested me. I sat there and I watched it for a little while, and I thought, yeah, that might be fun. That could be fun. And it was actually really good. I really enjoyed the stuff they were doing. I remember things like watching, I think it was Dave did something off a tree through a table or something. And, there was, cooking sheets or Jack Daniels signs and Xboxes and stuff. And I thought, that looks like fun. And I'd done some backyarding before. I hadn't done a lot. I'd, just sort of messed around a little bit. And I did some training. I'd been in the ring a few times and, learned how to take a bump. And I thought, one day I decided I was going to send Mark a message and say, look, I'd like to get into that. If you're looking to have another member of your roster, I'd be happy to come and try out for you and see what happens. And from there, we started messaging each other, and one thing led to another, and I eventually packed my bags, got on a train to Preston, and before you know it, I was there, and that's how that came about.
Very good. That was spot on. Brilliant. Very good. Less than 2 minutes as well.
That's timing at its absolute...
That is timing.
That's wonderful. Okay, moving on.
What did you know going into your first UBW event about the history of things like how Pete had destroyed BBW and UBW had risen from the ashes of that and all that sort of thing? Did you know much about that, or was that just...
I really knew nothing about the political side of things. I knew that everyone was not like friends in real life. They were a group of very different people from very different areas of the country who had one common interest, which was they all wanted to just, wrestle and just, put this fed together. I didn't know anything about the politics. When I got there, I didn't know anything about the booking. I didn't know anything about, who was who really. I sort of came along and shook everyone's hand and sort of said, yeah, I'm Danny, I'm, just here to try out and stuff. I didn't know anything about the backstage, if you want to call it that, or behind the trees, as we'll call it, about the behind the trees stuff. So, no, I pretty much got there with an open mind and just sort of said, yeah, let's see where this goes. And everyone was real friendly to me. Everyone was real nice. I think it was because they had all sort of they had all come from the same thing. They all, were from different places, like I said, and they all wanted to be there for the same reason. So to have someone else come along and join them, I think I was welcomed in, and I've got nothing bad to say about anybody. Not on my first day. I think everyone was really nice to me, and I didn't know anything about the political side of things. So I tried to stay clear of that, if anything.
Why did UBW tape in Preston?
As I understood it, Preston was the central location. We had people coming from, way up north, and, I think I was the furthest south person. I came from, at the time I was at university in Leicester, and it was a straight train to Nottingham, and then from Nottingham I went up to Preston. But I didn't know really where everyone was from. I think, was it Whitehaven as the place where Johnny come from, which is, I tried to find that on a map, and it was, you know, sort of one of those cities where you sort of zoom out and, you know, oh, there it is. But Preston, I think we had a good location there, we had a good field, we had a good place to tape. It was very open, and it seemed like a neutral location for everybody to sort of meet in. That was my understanding. I always thought it'd be fun to do it in like London or something, but getting everyone down there and, you know, trying to put that together would have been more hassle than it was worth, probably. But yeah, I mean, from my understanding, Preston was just that sort of the neutral location, which I was fine with. It only took me 4.5 hours to get there. It cost me £57 a time, but yeah, it was good.
BBW.
£57 a job to Dave. How's that?
BBW was meant to be touring fed.
Oh, was it? I didn't know.
So
that. No.
BBW Prove It was taped in Keighley.
Yeah.
And then Relentless was taped in Stoke. The Retribution was taped in Stoke. Relentless was taped in Sheffield, and we were going to go to each. So it was fair.
So the original concept was like a WrestleMania 2 thing where you had 3 different locations and you were going to tour all 3 of these.
No, we wanted it to be fair to every member on the roster, so we went to everyone's places. So Salvation, the first UEW one of 2009, was meant to be taped in Whitehaven, but Whitehaven, as you've just said, was such a twat to get to. It was one of those, right, where can we choose that? We need to choose one that's a more central location. So what we did is we sort of drew a circle around where and dotted it all where everyone was, and it was just looking at it on the map, just going, Preston's perfect.
UEW was already in Preston by the time I arrived, and I know you guys have been other places beforehand, but I think, you know, for me that was where I knew it, that I always knew it, and it just seemed, I remember once we went and we were going to do like there was a big gathering, like a backyard feds or something we were going to do, and it was not done in Preston, and I think this was when Domination was taped, but from memory I just thought it's a bit weird, you know, not doing it in Preston. Preston sort of became the homeland of UEW. Whether that was because it was the neutral location or because that's just where you taped it and everything seemed to fit together, I don't know. But I'll always remember Preston as the home of UBW.
Excellent. So you didn't wrestle on the... You were at the Salvation taping.
I was.
But you didn't wrestle on the show.
I wrestled... My first match in UBW was against Dave, which was on the recoil after Salvation. Dave had just... I can't remember who was the champion going into Salvation, but I know he wasn't the champion coming out of Salvation. And it was, yeah, I can't remember even if I was told before then that I was going to wrestle Dave on the day. I more than anything came along to see what it was like, and then it was like, do you want to wrestle? When I got there, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And then it was, you know, I got put with Dave, and you know, we didn't really talk much about the match we were going to have. We sort of came up with a finish, and we sort of went with it. It was an interesting experience, but you know, me and Dave got along fine, and things seemed to work well together. But I didn't wrestle. I wasn't booked, as far as I was aware, to wrestle that day when I arrived.
Well, so what was it like watching the Salvation taping, as it were, the actual main matches?
It's very different when you watch something online and you have a perception of it, and then when you go and see it in person, it's like if you've ever been to like a WrestleMania or something, you see it on TV and it's like this big thing, and then you get there and you realise what it is. I think it was the same thing, and you know, obviously on a different scale, but it was, you know, I'd seen it online, and I'd seen, you know, you guys obviously just wrestling each other. I'd never seen the actual community of guys who had come together and the way they spoke to each other and hung out. It was like a group of mates meeting up and, you know, having a beer, but it was without the beer, and it was just beating each other up with trays. So it was, you know, it was fun for me to come along and get to know everybody, but I liked what I saw. I mean, I didn't leave. But no, when I got there and I went,
oh dear, that's no good, is it? I was trying to angle the microphone, but that's...
all right, we'll pause.
What I was gonna ask you is, I was trying to aim towards the. I was going to say something along the lines of you weren't booked to wrestle on the Salvation taping, but at the same time you weren't booked to wrestle on the Doomsday taping.
I didn't wrestle on the Doomsday
because you did the interference in Dave's match, didn't you?
That was the thing. When I did my match with Dave for Recoil, and then I said to myself, all right, well, I've got... everyone has to get over somehow. You got to do something to be different, and I hadn't really thought of what I could do to get over. And the hilarity of whatever the word is of the situation is that I thought if I put a camouflage hat on, I'll get heat. Right? Instantly dislike, because the plan going forward, which we came up with on the day, was that I was going to have a little feud with Dave. Dave had come off the title. It was going to be Max and Champagne feuding for the belt going forward. Dave was sort of out of the title picture, and he needed somebody to work with, which is what I was sort of instructed that I would be doing. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to be a heel here. I've got to get heat, but no one really knows me. So I came out in my first match. I swore at the camera, had my hood up, was very kind of like, all right, I'm just going to stick to me and do my own thing. And then I got told to interfere. Basically, the kickoff for the feud was going to be like I was going to interfere and cost him the title match he had with Max. And I remember I got there on the day and I thought, okay, I've got to get heat somehow. So I had this camouflage UFC hat, and I thought that was going to get me heat. It did to an extent, but what made me the character that I became was the fact that there was a little boy about a metre away who said, hey, look, it's John Cena. And from that moment, I was just, that was it. Every time I came out, they do the Cena theme song, and I made the FU my finisher just because, you know, why not? And it was just little things like that to get heat, but I didn't really know about, you know, developing my character or what I wanted to be. I just knew I had to find some way to be different, but I didn't expect it to come down to, you know, being a John Cena ripoff. So I kind of to a degree regret wearing that hat, but, you know, that kind of brought out some amusement in it, and it got me a reaction, which is what you need to do. So I was quite happy that I got put in that position in that match with Max and Dave, because it sort of kick-started off the character of Danny Ace, which, you know, going forward wasn't a bad thing.
I'm just going to try and move in there. The wave file's not very big, so I'm just wondering if you could get closer to you. See if that makes a difference. So UBW Salvation got a metric fuck ton of views when it was put onto YouTube, and then we had all the problems with the haters and it being flagged down for adults fighting and all the crap. So it meant that UBW couldn't stay on YouTube, so we had to find a new platform for the matches and the shows to go on to. Can you remember much about the process and how we discovered Ning? Because
from my understanding, the problem UBW had was that it couldn't get any distribution. We couldn't put it anywhere. So we had, you know, all these ideas for storylines and matches and build-ups that we'd done and shows that we were ready to do, but we didn't have anywhere to put it. You know, it wasn't allowed on YouTube because of reasons. People were flagging it for violence, and Facebook at the time wasn't as big as it is now. It wasn't enough of a platform, I don't think, for UBW to have been, you know, on there and get a substantial amount of views. We found a website called Ning. I don't remember who found it. I used it at university, but it definitely wasn't my idea to use Ning. I won't take credit for that. But we used Ning for a while, and it seemed to work really well. We used that as our primary website, and people would, you know, it got quite a following at its time. But the problem with backyard wrestling in general is that there is going to be violence. There is going to be people getting hurt. There is going to be, you know, injuries and blood and, you know, weapons and all these things that, you know, are a no-no for things like YouTube and Facebook, whatever. But Ning, for some reason, was alright. We didn't get any problems with it. So I remember the initial stages of putting the footage on there, and sort of we were waiting for it to get taken down, and it didn't, and we just ran with it, and it seemed to work out quite well.
Yeah, because Ning got you could have a chat function,
Yeah.
and you could have all sorts. It wasn't just a place to put videos. It became like UW's home, didn't it? Because the fans could interact with us, because we would always be there would always be like a UW wrestler in the chat room. So that was brilliant. So yeah, as I said before, you didn't wrestle at gyms apart from the interference. So did that piss you off? Because you just mentioned you were spending a lot of money to get to the shows. It's 2 tapings where you did one match, because you fought. No, I was going to say you fought me at the Vendetta taping. So yeah, you had one match with Dave, and then the next one you interfered with Dave, and
I knew when I got there I knew that I wouldn't have a big role to start with. That's not why I went. I went so that I would be invited back. You know, that was the thing. I knew if I went in and I did something good, you know, in any kind of way. Luckily for me, mine and Dave's match was okay. You know, obviously it wasn't great. It wasn't supposed to be great. It was supposed to be a filler match more than anything, but it was okay. I did a very good job of convincing you guys that I could hold a main event spot on your show, which I think was the main event of Recall 3. I'm not sure what it was, but anyway, you put me in that position, and I think it was alright. And then obviously to be sort of go from being absolutely nothing to main eventing a Recoil and then interfering in a title match, and all of a sudden, oh look, you know, you're in a program with Dave, and we went from there. So it wasn't so much for me about the money or the travelling and stuff. It was like, I want to be a part of this, and you know, I just had to do what I could to be invited back.
Good answer. What's your opinion of having the RWL guys on our shows? So it's 3 questions in one really. Opinion of having the RWL guys on the shows. The second one is the RWL guys opening Salvation. So the first ever proper UBW match you saw was an RWL match. Your opinions on that, please.
This was Velo and who? Some guy.
I'm sorry, I can't remember his name because he changed his name.
Yeah.
Craig Steele. Something like that. And then the third one is, did you have any thoughts, opinions, or did you even want to face the Executioner? Because if you remember, we did the deal where if you lost to an RWL wrestler, you fought the Executioner. So, because that was one of my ideas, right? So we made it so that if we have the RWL guys on, if we have the versus match, at least there's a reason for these matches to happen.
When I got there and I saw the RWL stuff, for a start I thought it was pretty weird that you had another promotion opening your show, and I thought I was like, well, all right, but they were good. I remember them doing some flippy dippy shit, and it all looked very crisp. It all looked very clean. Didn't say 2 words to either of them. They didn't seem to speak to anyone. They kind of kept to themselves and sort of were like, okay, well, we're over here. We're separate from you guys. Which I thought was pretty crappy. But when they got there and they started doing what they did, I think they were really, really, really good at doing what they do. You could tell they'd obviously been trained to a certain level. With regards to the stipulation being that if you lost to one of the RWL guys, you had to face the Executioner. Looking back now, at the time, I didn't even meet the Executioner. I don't think I couldn't tell you what his name was. If you told me his name was Ronald, I would believe you. I didn't know anything about him. I knew he was a big guy and he liked to beat people up. And looking back now, if you had told me when I got there that I was fighting him, I would be like, Now, sort of when I got into UBW and you said you're going to fight the Executioner, I'd be like, yeah, come on. Give me, but yeah, I mean, it's just a stipulation, it's storyline, it's a character. It wasn't anything like major. If that's who you put against, that's who you put against. How many times do people get booked against Andre?
I would love to have faced the Executioner so badly, but I didn't want to face the RWL guys, so
yeah.
Not interested.
I think the RWL guys, when you look at them and you go back and you watch their matches, they knew what they were doing, and they knew what they were doing. And I think it was beneath them for them to be wrestling in a backyard fair, which is why they kept themselves separate rather than sort of join in with the rest of us. But no, I mean, they were good at what they were doing. They, just kept rather quiet about it.
They were spot monkeys. They didn't tell stories.
Yeah.
Our matches, one of the things I prided ourselves on UBW is that we told stories, and they just did, hey, let's do some spots, which is good and everything. And it's on our, to put it as the opening match was so daft.
I mean, the thing with Spotfest is it doesn't mean nothing. It's great for the 10 minutes it goes on for, but okay, then what?
Well said. So your first free preview match was at Vendetta, a 2 out of 3 tables match with the Extreme One. I want to know who came up with the gimmick idea for the match, or what you remember about that. I also want to know how on earth Vendetta turned into a fed with no rules. How the fuck did Vendetta turn into a show of 3 matches that were all ridiculously hardcore?
By the time we got to Vendetta, I had somehow become the BBW champion, which I still don't know why or how. It was this pack of bottles which was sellotaped together with duct tape and had a belt on it, like an old man's jeans belt, from what I remember. And I remember thinking, okay, so I've got to now try and make this mean something, but I'm also feuding with Dave, but the belt's not on the line, and it's more about the feud than it is the belt. So the belt, I mean, to me, the BBW belt, by that point, you know, we had the UBW title. BBW title didn't mean shit. No one cared about it. The match we had, I think it was like a 5-way or something that we did, and I remember one spot from it, I gave Johnny a dragon suplex. That was it. That's all I remember for that. I remember I tried to give Pete a pile driver one time, and this, you know, I sort of said, okay, you're going to have to push yourself up, and I did it, and he fell on me. And I was just sort of laying there thinking, all right, okay, this is bad. And the title really didn't mean that much, you know. I was just like, yeah, you know, it was what it was. But when I got to Vendetta, it was me and Dave, and we came up with this idea. Dave wanted to do a tables match, and I was cool with that. And I said, well, you know, we just need, because we were chatting, I just said, we need to do something more than that. Because a tables match, you can only do so much before you have to stop it. The tables match has to end. You can do so many false finishes with it and miss the table spots or, you know, shit like that. But I said, okay, well, what about 2 out of 3 falls tables match? And then Dave was really into that idea, and he liked it. Coming up with the spots for it was tricky because we thought, okay, we've got to make every single table spot different. It's hard enough to come up with a good table spot, but to put 3 of them together into one match was kind of difficult. But we said sort of, okay, well, let's do the thing with the thumbtacks. So we put thumbtacks on there. He'd get me in a triangle choke, pick him up, and bang, and that worked. That was good. Then he put me on there and did a jump off the ladder, and people didn't like that one for some reason. The third one was the mess because we in our minds it looked so good. We had this idea to set this table up by a tree. He was going to run at me. I was going to catch him overhead, belly to belly, and we get into this stupid spot, and he comes at me, and I'm like, okay, come on. And he comes at me, and I turn too quickly and end up sort of giving him a sort of like, it looks like, you know, if Abyss was on heroin and did a black hole slam, that's what it would look like, because you sort of fall and just went into the table instead of the table breaking. So that was kind of disappointing. But the match itself, I think, was really good. I think, you know, people liked that one, and I think that was kind of the one that sort of got me over, even more so as a Danny Ace character than, you know, wearing a hat that represented John Cena. But I give a lot of credit to Dave, because Dave, more than anyone, sort of planned that, and I sort of went along with what he was saying. I would say he called 80% of that match, and I give a lot of credit to Dave for doing that.
What about Vendetta and how it was just ridiculously hardcore?
I thought UBW was a hardcore fed to begin with.
Oh dear, that wasn't meant to do. Carry on.
What are you doing?
I was just filming a little bit to show it people.
Okay. I thought UBW was a hardcore fed to begin with, so I didn't actually realise that... I mean, when you arrive to a taping and there's no ring and no ropes, you kind of think to yourself, okay, well, there's no rules here, are there? You can't exactly, you know, reach for the ropes if you're in a submission hold. How are they going to break it? So I always thought UBW was a hardcore fed anyway. Vendetta itself, it turned into our sort of like blood sport event when, you know, every match kind of was more sadistic than the one before it. I remember Pete and Johnny had a pretty crazy match. Then you had me and Dave, and obviously Champagne and Carnage in the main event was, was pretty gruesome. But it was, I mean, Vendetta became the hardcore show of a hardcore promotion, and that was I think how Vendetta got its reputation as being a hardcore show. But when I arrived in UBW, I knew that it was a hardcore fed anyway, and
I was going to ask you about the BBW Championship, but you covered that one really nicely. What else did I want to say? What did it mean to you to have an actual proper championship belt as opposed to using a WWE belt?
The thing with the BBW title, as I said earlier, was that by that point it didn't really mean anything. Because BBW had sort of been the fed that had died out, and it was like the secondary promotion. UBW was like the company, and then you had the BBW title as part of that company. And it wasn't the fact it was, like I said, a collection of bottles that were sellotaped together with duct tape with an old man's belt. It was, it represented where you guys had started.
I need to stop you there.
Yeah?
That's not what the BBW title was.
Wasn't it, was it?
So the BBW title was, do you remember how we were shown on Battle Born Wrestling in America? It was a backyard wrestling.
I never knew that.
It was backyard wrestling, almost like a TV show, almost. So it'd be like an hour-long show, and they'd have matches from loads of radio promotions all over the world. And to be featured on it, you had to have a BBW championship.
I thought he stood for Big Beautiful Women.
So
that's why I was excited to win it.
Battleborn Wrestling UK Championship. We had to have a championship to be featured on their thing. They put the whole of Salvation on their channel, for example, all of it, and it's still there.
Until this day, I didn't actually know that the BBW promotion stood for Battleborn Wrestling.
No. Our BBW was British Backyard Wrestling.
Oh.
But this is why it's confusing. The BBW UK Championship was the Battleborn Wrestling UK Championship.
Well, cut that out then, because I really shouldn't talk about that, because I know nothing about it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
No. So the question,
yeah.
the actual original question was how did you feel about having an actual UBW Championship belt? Because every other promotion out there
not winning the BBW belt,
no.
right.
So they had every other promotion out there used a WWE belt, didn't they? A toy one, a replica one, and that is their belt. We had a UBW Championship. Just wondering how you feel about that.
And until I won it, I didn't understand how prestigious the UBW title was, in the sense that very few feds had their own belt, and we, I think it was Mark or Dave came up with the concept to have their own belt created, and it doesn't matter that it was a plate on a leather strap or anything. It represented that this is our belt for our company, and very few other places have that. A lot of the time you find that they're using replica belts and things like that, and it's not meaningful to the company. I think if a company's going to be taken seriously, then they need to have their own belt. And I think the UBW title represented that everybody there had something to fight for, because anybody can go out and buy a replica belt, but there's only one UBW title.
Oh, that's a great line. Do you want to put on, in the UBW stuff folder, there's the 2 UBW highlights vids. Do you want to put one of those on as background?
Oh, quite like this. But
oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Happy days. It does look good, don't get me wrong.
It does, it's good, yeah. Can we take a 2-minute break?
Of course.
Do you want to keep filming?
No, we'll pause it there. That's 27 minutes, and we've got about half of what I want you to say.